Yeah, we should start. I got to figure out what's the best way to share the slides. This window?
Well, if your browser allows you to share just the window, then that usually works better.
Yeah. All right. Let me, as soon as I can get those shared, I will do that, and we can start. Oops. Yes. Select window. All right, is that working now?
Screen share is being started. I'm still not seeing slides now. It's thinking. Yeah, there it is. I
Oh,
see the
there.
slides now.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, you're hot.
Cool. Thank you, Roman. All right. Now that I've mastered the tricky technology, I'll just be able to hit the down button. Okay. Welcome everyone to Acme. We have a few presentations, about an hour. So let's, I know we all wanted to be in Bangkok, but instead we're all on video. So be it. You have all hopefully seen the note well before. It describes how the IETF operates, what your rights and privileges and responsibilities are. By viewing this via MeetEcho, you have signed on entered into, signed the blue sheet, and therefore a legally binding document should we all get sued. So don't worry about it. Administrative tasks. So we need one or two note takers. Yov's going to do the Jabber scribe because he'll cut in and talk. Can we have someone to do the Kodi MD or Etherpad, whichever you'd like to call it? We'll be stuck on this slide until we get some volunteers.
Has volunteered to drop some things in Kodi MD. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Great. Okay. It should be pretty easy. It's populated with the formatted version of the minutes of the agenda. So great, thank you. All right, next slide. The agenda. So we already did the first bullet, the administrivia. I'll go through the next section is the drafts that are out of the working group and onto, various parts of their publication lifecycle. The authority token list, those have been IESG reviewed and we're waiting for revision. I know the authors plan to do stuff. They've just sort of been busy with STIR, which is their main interest. So those will happen. Alexi had a whole bunch of feedback. And he's just recently posted a revision, and he's got another one coming soon to hopefully address the last of the feedback. Last meeting, we pushed STAR delegation through the working group last call. I have to do the Shepherd's write-up and hit the forward to the ISG button. I will do that shortly. Drafts in progress.
Jump in.
Yeah.
Hey, Richard, if I could just jump in on the first two documents around authority token. They're actually not with the IESG. They're still actually with me. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the revisions. Yeah, we haven't made it that far yet.
Got it. Yep. Thank you, Roman. Yes. So they are waiting for. They've had the AD review, and he's requested some revisions, reasonably so. Outlook notice. Yep. Thank you. STAR delegations waiting Shepherd's write-up. I will get to that probably during the next coffee break thereafter and hit the button to forward that. Drafts in progress. Acme client and the Acme integrations. We have presentations from Owen Friel about the updates on those. DTN node ID was published as a working group draft, has had no other changes, and I don't believe Brian is here, so I don't think we'll have any talking on that. Some new documents were submitted for working group consideration. One on subdomains within Acme. We'll be talking about that. Onion routing was submitted by Roland Shoemaker, who has left Let's Encrypt and moved on to another job, and I haven't been able to track him down, so I don't think we'll be having anything on that. I encourage anyone who is interested in Onion stuff, and I'm trying to solicit some volunteers, to consider picking it up. Otherwise, we'll just have to consider it abandoned. Service discovery, we'll have a presentation, and related to that is, I guess, the server capabilities, and that will be coming from Fraser Teasdale. So, any bashing of the agenda?
Well, Kathleen is not here, but she asked to get feedback on her draft. I guess it means integrations.
Yes, good integrations, and actually, I think her draft was an Acme client. No? But
yeah,
okay.
But then I think it was merged. Anyway, she wants to know if we think that's ready for a working group last call.
Okay, so when we when Owen presents on integration, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Owen, you're up. And Richard, Owen, Michael?
Can you see and hear me? It thinks I'm talking.
Very faintly.
Very faintly. Is that any better? Any better?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so a quick update on what's happening with Acme integrations. We can go on to the next slide, Rich. Rich, can you toggle to the next slide? Rich, can you hear me?
For what it's worth, I can hear you.
Anyone hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I hear you.
Loud and clear.
Rich, can you go to the next slide? Well, I share. How about I share? Let me see if I can share.
You can't as long as Rich is sharing, but
How
I
do I
think I
share?
can.
Have we lost?
Here, I stopped his sharing, so you can start now.
What's okay?
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Fraser, are you available?
Okay. Now, people can see my screen, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, quick summary. This is an informational draft. It describes how Acme can be integrated with multiple existing client and device search enrollment mechanisms without requiring any changes to Acme. The three main things we're looking at is integration with EST, integration with Brusky and Brusky Cloud, which is really just Brusky with a default cloud registrar, and integration with TEEP. There's been a few changes since draft 0.2. We just published draft 0.2 very recently. And we've added the security considerations, and this is a quick summary of what we documented. The first thing to consider is that Acme, this integrations draft makes no changes to the existing standards. We're just primarily referring to the security considerations that exist in the existing reference standards. But a couple of things we did explicitly call out. The Acme integration service could be configured with keys for DNS updates in order to handle Acme challenges. So the operator of that Acme integration service should consider restricting the blast radius and the DNS zone that those keys can update. Similarly, the Acme integration service could be authorized to write to HTTP servers for handling HTTP challenges. And again, the operator should consider restricting the blast radius of these server accesses. And also the Acme integration service, because it's handling requests coming in from multiple clients and proxying those requests through to the Acme server, we need to consider Acme integration DOS attacks. And we should consider on the Acme integration service having certificate caches to avoid having to ping the Acme server continuously when it's not necessary. So those three security considerations are described in more detail in the draft. Additionally, the only other changes that are made, there's some minor editorial changes. We fixed up some broken references, and we've fixed up some nits with the call flows and some nits and typos throughout the doc, but they're only minor editorial. There's one discussion item I do want to talk about. It was brought up on some of the mailers a while back, but it didn't really go anywhere. And it's about CMC RAs that EKU. So particularly when you look at Brusky, and it also mentions this in EST, that when EST or Brusky goes to enroll for a certificate, when the EST or Brusky client goes to enroll for a certificate against the EST or Brusky service, the client or the pledge should check for the CMC RA EKU. And what I've quoted there is the explicit text from EST, the explicit text from Brusky that outlines how the CMC RA should be checked. Now, when you consider Acme says nothing about EKUs at all. And currently, if you look at, say, the bold implementation for Let's Encrypt, Acme server policy and server implementation decides what EKUs to accept and to include in CSRs. So when we're looking at EST or Brusky integration with Acme, we just need to think about if the registrar itself is going to be enrolling automatically with Acme to get its own identity certificate. Should that registrar be requesting a CMC RA from Acme? Currently, Let's Encrypt won't give out a CMC RA EKU. And what does that really mean when you're getting a certificate from a public Acme certificate authority such as Let's Encrypt? And should the pledge really be checking for this anymore? So that's just a general discussion point that we probably need to bring to the Brewski Anima mailers and the IoT onboarding mailers, but I just wanted to call it out here because we don't have a good answer for this yet. We haven't thought about it deeply enough. And next steps is reviewers, please, and feedback, please. And there is an old email thread on Brewski and on this CMC RA that we must bring to the top of the mailers again, because we do want some input on this, and we do need to close on this before we close on the Acme Brewski and Acme EST integrations sections. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. See that we have Michael.
I'm going to stop the share so that I can take a look at the chat again. And that's it. Back to you, Rich, or I am done.
No, you're not, because we have a question from Michael.
Oh, Owen asked me a couple days ago about this point, and I went, "Oh shit, yeah, this is a real issue." And so I have an email half written to that about this issue, and ironically, Brewski allows the registrar to have a self-signed certificate, and that is actually part of the leverage point. So you can have this bizarre situation where you could have a registrar that's giving out certificates to clients that it got via Acme while itself not using one, which really feels bizarre. So I think that, that's a discussion that I think we should have. And in the not yet adopted Acme subdomains thing, it's possible that maybe that the authorization process that would allow you to through one authorization do quite a number of subdomains, not a wildcard, but many certificates. Maybe that actually should set that bit. But then there's some other issues about what that bit really means that maybe it's actually really we shouldn't set that bit. And we need another bit. I don't know. But I think that's a conversation I'm going to start on the list.
Okay, thank you, Owen. Anything else? Okay, so I guess the next one is what, subdomains? Yeah, subdomains.
Okay, I will share again. So, Rich, I think you need to, one of the chairs needs to approve me. I just requested share.
Oh, okay, I just granted.
Okay. Okay, so subdomains 3, we published a new version of this a couple of months ago. So the summary, Acme allows an Acme server to issue certs for a given identifier, e.g. a subdomain, without requiring a challenge to be explicitly fulfilled against that identifier. For example, an Acme server could issue a cert for foo1.foo2.bar.example.com, where the Acme client only has to fulfill a challenge against one of the parent domains, for example, bar.example.com or example.com. An Acme server could issue certs for a number of subdomain certs and only require a single challenge to be fulfilled against the parent domain, which is a nice optimization and has scale benefits when we want to issue a large number of identity certs. And this is related to the device integration stuff we were talking about in the last presentation. Acme for subdomains may optionally be used with pre-authorizations, but pre-authorizations are not necessarily required. I just quoted the relevant section, the relevant text from RFC 8555 on order objects, and it's a bit in bold here. That's important. The authorizations required are dictated by server policy, and there may not be a one-to-one relationship between the order identifiers and the authorizations required. So what that means is that the order object could be for a subdomain, and the authorization required could be for a parent domain. Some changes since changes in 3 since ITF 108. We've incorporated the mailer feedback on 02. I know Russ gave quite a bit of feedback. We've updated the terminology section, and we've added security sections, and there's some open items that I do want to talk about that were discussed on the mailer, but we didn't really reach any concrete conclusion. And just for terminology clarification, what I added was some CA browser forum baseline requirements definitions. I referenced these for base domain, domain name, and domain namespace. And just for clarity, what I'm defining a subdomain as is a domain that is in a domain namespace but given parent domain, where domain namespace, domain name, and parent domain are the CA browser forum definitions. Security considerations, we've added quite a bit here, but in summary, Acme for subdomains has exactly the same 2 security goals as Acme, and I've quoted these 2 security goals from Acme verbatim. So only an entity that controls an identifier can get an authorization for that identifier, and once authorized, an account key's authorizations cannot be improperly used by another account. So we've exactly the same security goals. We don't propose making any changes to our counter key management, channel establishment, validation channel establishment, or the security mechanisms or threat models there. And for Acme server policy decisions, we just clarified, because there was some confusion on the mailer about this as well. The document may be applicable to public CAs, private CAs for issuance of IoT certs, etc. The baseline requirements may not necessarily be applicable, and specific server policies are outside of the scope of the documents. We just clarified all that in the security consideration section. There's 2 main open items which were discussed over and back on the mailer over the last few months. First is, does the client need a mechanism to indicate that they want to authorize a parent domain and not the explicit subdomain identifier? Or does the client need a mechanism to indicate that they're happy to authorize against a choice of identifiers? So for example, for the foo1, the foo2, that bar, that example.com, should we enhance the Acme protocols that the client is able to specify anywhere from 1 to 4 identifiers that they're willing to fulfill challenges against? And the second question is, that was raised in the mailers, is does the server need a mechanism to provide a choice of identifiers to the client and let the client choose which challenge to fulfill? So for the same example again, should the server be able to specify anywhere from 1 to 4 identifiers that the client can pick from to fulfill? So both 1 and 2 require JSON object definition changes to the baseline Acme spec, and they're not currently covered in the subdomains document. Currently, the document only defines how a client can submit a new order or new authorization for a subdomain, and the server can choose any of the parent identifiers that requires a challenge fulfillment on, but can choose just one. And so we're not giving the client a mechanism to offer a choice of identifiers that they're willing to fulfill. Similarly, we're not giving the server the option to choose or to provide a choice of identifiers that they're willing for the client to pick and choose from. And if we want to do that, it requires some changes to the JSON. And next steps is just discussion on the open items. And based on the discussion of the open items, what do we actually want to do with this document, because it's still not adopted. Okay, I'll just leave the open items shared out there. And that's it. That's the presentation, pretty quick.
Any comments? Because I know there were comments in the Jab room. Might as well make them at the mic, unless you want me to relay them.
I can see the comments in the chat room seem to be about the previous one where we're asking about RA EKUs, right? So So that's the open question from the integrations one. That slide that popped up, the integration to CMCRA, and currently Acme says nothing at all about EKUs. It's entirely up to the server policy, and we actually don't know whether I don't know whether we need to try and explicitly extend the Acme spec to see anything about EKUs you're requesting, or explicitly extend the specs server can advertise what EKUs it's willing to offer. But we're not proposing that because we haven't really discussed the EKUs specifically for the CMCRA on the millers at all yet. So at the moment, we're not proposing or suggesting any changes to Acme to do with EKUs. And currently that policy is just Acme internal server policy. And we're not entirely sure how to handle the CMCRAs yet, which is why we need that discussion. But in the subdomains, we're not talking about EKUs at all. In the subdomains draft, we're not really talking about EKUs at all. The only open items are the choice of identifiers. So is anyone any opinions or comments on these two open items for subdomains that were, I think it was it Jerome and Ryan who raised these subdomains, possibly? I'm trying to recall.
Just a comment about the EKUs and whether we want a mechanism for servers to express things like what EKUs it will put on the cert. I have a draft, which I'll speak to very briefly later, about a mechanism for servers to express their capabilities in the directory meta field. And in that draft, I also talk about the possibility of servers expressing their policy. That's out of scope for the draft. But I do suggest that it might be a topic of interest for future work. So I'm definitely on board with discussing ways for servers to express their policies so clients can make more nuanced decisions about whether or how to interact with the server.
Okay, it sounds interesting. I'll read those when they come out.
To move forward, Owen, maybe just start 2 email threads, one on each open item, and let's see what the group says, if anything.
Okay. Okay, I'll stop sharing. I'm finished. Thank you.
Brian Sipos, you want to give an update? We missed earlier that you were here. Sorry.
I'm on. Can you hear me? Okay. So the good news is that the primary DTN drafts are making their way through the IESG review now. The security review on the primary users of these certificates that are being discussed for Acme issuance are being worked out. There's a lot of detail that's being hammered down, which is good. But what that means is that the Acme use of those certificates is really going to rely on those details being finalized. And I also saw that the SMIME draft, having gone through for Acme, progressed further, is going to help out because the DTN use case is very similar in flow, though a completely different encoding than the SMIME use case. So all the secondary activity is progressing, which is good for the final use that DTN will have. of Acme. But that means no change to the draft in the very near term.
Okay. Yo, if you want to solicit discussion on the client document, Kathleen's doc.
Yeah, sure. Just let me share my screen this time. It's this one, right? Yes, I did. Okay. Can you see this? Because I can't. Can you see the screen?
It's still being started.
Oh, okay. So let me know when you can see it. I thought I did.
Comment said you need to pick the screen app you want to share.
Let's see that. Okay,
You
Chrome. And that's the one, I think, yeah.
There. Yes.
Okay, so this is the draft, and what Kathleen wanted to know is she wanted to solicit comments, and the other thing to answer the question whether we think it's ready for working group last call. So, anyone? Okay, that's not a lot of participation, and I guess we'll take it to the list. I'll just stop my sharing. Okay, which leaves us just with the Acme service discovery.
So I need to start a screen share.
Oh.
Okay, back to the beginning. So just presenting my draft for a service discovery mechanism for Acme. So why do we need service discovery? The Acme ecosystem is growing, and there are now multiple publicly trusted CAs with Acme endpoints, and also private enterprise PKIs are beginning to implement Acme. So we have environments that may have access to multiple Acme servers. Furthermore, we're standardizing new kinds of identifier types and validation methods. So clients need to know what service can I use to acquire an email certificate for S-MIME, or to acquire a DNS certificate. Explicit client configuration can be challenging, not always. Some environments with centralized configuration management are likely to use that to push configuration to clients. And the disposition that says, well, I don't want any auto discovery, I want to make sure that my client is explicitly configured, is valid. But in other cases, that doesn't work so well, or it doesn't scale. So you can think of devices, maybe printers, IoT things, even a light bulb entering a network. And this thing could be quite difficult to explicitly tell you need to use this Acme server over here, but you may still wish to be able to have it talk Acme and opportunistically acquire a certificate to secure communications with that device. Another situation is an organization with a bring your own device kind of network where people are coming in with who knows what software that can't necessarily be managed by their configuration management system. And yet, you know, their email clients, they might want their users to talk SMITE. Okay, if you're a big enterprise network using Outlook everywhere, you might be able to push that configuration out through Active Directory. Well, what if some of your users have brought their own computers and they're running Thunderbird or Mutt? So these are the kinds of use cases that service discovery can be useful for. The goal is that where you want service discovery, it enables automatic selection of the best server in the environment, best being defined by the network administrators and how they express the services that are available. So there are a bunch of different service discovery protocols. Some are peer-to-peer or distributed, such as DNS service discovery over multicast DNS. Some use a central registry. Some are specifically tied to particular communications technology, such as Bluetooth. And some are general, using existing naming systems, such as the DNS. So in the enterprise environments, DNS SRV records have been used for a long time for auto discovery of LDAP servers with the organization's directory, the Kerberos key distribution centers, mail servers, and probably other things that I don't even know about. RFC 6763 defines DNS service discovery, and it uses pointer records for listing of available service instances in a given domain, and SRV records and TXT records with supplementary data to give information about where those service instances are located and any other data that might be of interest to clients for that particular service type. So Acme Service Discovery is built upon DNS Service Discovery, or DNSSD. So there are a few assumptions here. The assumptions are that the Acme client has its network configured and that its network configuration includes a domain name or a Kerberos realm name or something that it can use to decide I'm going to look for services in this domain. The assumption is that the organization can manage its own DNS records to advertise the services. And we also make an assumption that successful retrieval of a directory object by an Acme client implies that the service or the server is up and running and available for the client to use. So the first step for the client is to determine its parent domains. These could be given by explicit configuration or, as I've alluded, something that comes via the network configuration or the Kerberos realm. Basically, some way for the client to decide here is a domain name or here is a series of domain names that I will search for Acme services in. It then searches for pointer records with the owner underscore Acme server dot underscore TCP dot the parent domain. And I'll just give an example here of this domain corp.example advertising two Acme server instances, one called corp CA and the other one called C4A. So each of those service instance names owns an SRV record and a TXT record that describe where that service is located, gives the path to the directory object, and gives a list of the Acme identifier types that Acme server supports. So this will allow the client to construct the URL to reach the directory object, and also make a decision about whether it will even attempt to use that server. For example, if this is an SMIME email client, there's no point that it would try and contact a server that's only offering DNS identifiers. An important thing here is that this specification rescopes the meaning of the SRV priority field across multiple owners, whereas traditionally it would only be for multiple SRV records in the same owner. Scoping it across multiple owners allows the administrator who is setting up these advertisements to define priority among different service instances. And the draft goes into a bit of detail about that, and also some security consequences of this rescoping of the priority field. So from here, the client will choose the best server, that is the highest priority server that is advertising capabilities that meet its needs, and constructs the directory URL, attempts to get the directory object and parse it to see if it is a valid Acme directory object. And if so, all good, that is the server that the client will try to use. Otherwise, it will try the next server, and if it exhausts all of the service instances advertised in the current parent domain, and it has other parent domains to try, then it can go across to the next parent domain and repeat the DNS service discovery for that parent domain. And once it runs out of parent domains, then it can either give up or fall back to a default, such as Let's Encrypt, if this is for a DNS client. So I have some working code for this. I have a fork of certbot where I hacked in the service discovery. I don't know if I will submit a pull request, but if you hack on certbot, I would be interested in your feedback on the feature and the draft in general, and also on how I have gone about that. And I wrote this blog post that gives a bit more detail and some demonstration of that running code. And if there is time, and if you really want to see it, then I can do a demo for you today, but I'd probably rather start just discussing some of the things that need discussion in this draft. So I'm very interested to hear what other people think about this rescoping of the semantics of the SRV priority field. We also need to think about multicast DNS. So DNS-SD works for multicast DNS and unicast. This specification restricts it to unicast unless there is explicit configuration telling the client that it can do it on multicast. But I think we need to restrict service discovery to domains not ending in .local, and we need to restrict or filter out service instance names that end in .local as well, so that Acme clients performing service discovery don't inadvertently accept service instance names that have been advertised over multicast DNS just in a first come, first served basis by peers on the local link. The security considerations talk about DNS security. I'm curious whether people think it's worthwhile or important to mention DNS over TLS and DNS over HTTPS. I see in the chat, Rust, does .home have similar concerns? Yes, possibly, stroke probably. And yeah, the whole question of parent domain selection, this draft does not seek to specify or constrain how clients would do this, but I would like to give good examples of how a client could do this that aren't completely insecure and a terrible idea, because people will sometimes mindlessly follow the examples. So yeah, we just don't want to give people loaded foot guns. So the next steps is for people to give feedback and for the working group to consider whether you would like to adopt this draft. I have the source for this draft in a GitHub repository. The link is there. And you can create issues there, submit pull requests if you wish. I'd be very happy to collaborate with people to improve and advance this draft. Brief note on other work. I have another draft. I don't want to elaborate it much today. That can go on the mailing list, but it's about giving servers a way to express their capabilities in the directory object. So this is not related to or required for service discovery, but it is another way for clients to make a decision earlier on about whether a server is suitable to be used by that client, rather than just trying to submit an order for a DNS name to an S/MIME Acme server, for example. I'm also curious if anyone is interested in working to specify SRV name support for Acme. This is something we've talked about a little bit at Red Hat. We think it would solve some problems that we have. Obviously, this would need to go hand in hand with proper support in popular TLS libraries for SRV name verification as well. But we have people at Red Hat whose whole job it is just to work in maintaining OpenSSL and NSS. So, if we agree it's a good idea, then where there's a will, there's a way. But again, that's something we could probably discuss on the mailing list. Just wanted to flag it as something that we're interested in. And that's all. Thank you.
Gee, I'm not sure. Well, I don't want to, yeah, we'll use, I guess, the show of hands tool, do a quick poll. How many people have read the draft? Give me a... raise your hand if you have. Do not raise your hand if you have not. All right. I don't think enough people have really read it yet to discuss, to consider adoption. Fraser, could you post an individual draft via the data tracker? And then we can, and then mail to the list asking people to read it, and let's see if we get feedback there. Or if you want to, if you prefer, just post a note to the list saying you've got the draft. Can we have some discussion? Let's see what the GitHub interactions are.
Yeah, the drafts have been published.
Okay.
So I'll just follow up with the mail to the list.
Okay.
Yeah, there is some good feelings about the idea, if not the particular draft, on the Jabber room. So there is interest in doing this, maybe in Acme.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment. Since we have a queue here, I'm popping in. So this is Richard Barnes from Cisco. I think this is a really good idea. I think this is a problem that is worth solving, that is certainly emerging in some enterprise use cases. I've seen some of the same challenges I expect Fraser has seen. I haven't looked in detail at the exact mechanism for discovery here. So I agree there's a need for some sort of discovery here. I haven't looked exactly at the details of the DNS-based thing here. The main thing I think worries me about this is the choice of the starting point, the name you use for lookup. And for that, I wonder if, for at least some identifier types, we could leverage the identifier you're looking to authenticate as a starting point. So for example, with a domain name identifier, you could use the domain name itself or some parent domain. Or for email address identifiers, you could potentially use the domain of the email address as the starting point, with appropriate underscore prefixes. Just suggestion there. The identifier type stuff, I wonder if that might be better in Meta as opposed to in the discovery system, since it's just one more HTTP query. So in general, I think this is on the right track, and I think it's probably a problem worth solving in this working group.
Mark, you're next. Bauschke. Okay, any other comments?
I guess all the others in the queue wanted to say essentially the same thing as Richard.
Okay. All right. We have hit the end of the agenda. And
this is the any other business part.
Yeah, normally we'd be like, okay, let's rush to get the cookies. Oh, Mark said he agrees with Richard, so okay. But since any cookies are either in the wrong time zone or have to make them yourself, is there any other business?
It's always the right time for cookies. Yes, Daniel.
Hi there, Daniel from Gilmore. I realize I am way behind on keeping up with what's going on in Acme, and I recognize that the S9 draft is very far advanced. But recent discussion on the LAMPS mailing list suggests that a preferred configuration for email users is to have two certificates. That is, one for encryption and one for signing. And I'm trying to find in the S-MIME draft how it deals with a dual certificate situation, and I don't see it. So I'm wondering if I'm just missing it, or if this is something that we need to actually think about for S-MIME. I don't mean to pull it back when it's this far advanced, but I'm just trying to figure out how I would do that. As a mail user agent implementer, how I would get a dual certificate, like dual certificates like that.
Very interesting question. I haven't thought about this. So yes, now would be a good time to clarify this, I think. Might need a small extension field. Let's take.
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder if that's just an informative note to say that, once you've validated an email identifier, you can issue different certs under it for different key types.
Well, I was just wondering if there is a need to signal that you want for one purpose or for another, and whether this will reflect in certificate. That's my only thought.
I will raise this on the Acme mailing list, I suppose. I'm not. I apologize for being, for it being this late in the process, but I'm not sure how to get that done.
Yeah, Roman?
Per DKG's feedback, if we want to talk about it a little bit on the mailing list and come to some agreement, we can just bring the document back. I mean, happy to do it.
Alexi said it. I have him in the notes. It's a good question. So Daniel, bring it up, and we'll give Alexi first whack at it, I guess.
Okay, will do.
Thanks. Anything else? Any other business? So I guess we got 2 minutes of our lives back. Thank you everyone for coming. No need to sign the blue sheets because they're generated automatically.
Thank you, and for your patience with the chairs, my Bluetooth connectivity problem. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Benson.